Hello, Karen. Welcome to the Feminine Frequency podcast. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Amy. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. We have had many conversations about money from different perspectives on the podcast. And what I know to be true is that there's never enough of this conversation, that money is something that so many people struggle with. There's so much emotion around money. There's so much energy that we carry around money. And especially as women, I think that this conversation is becoming more and more open to the public, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear what brought you to being an educator of this work and being an author around specifically the conversation around money.
Around money. Well, I've always been a student or a teacher. So that's my archetype. I came out of the womb, pointing to a little blackboard and teaching my dolls school. Like that was the game I played. And blackboard will date me, the flip chart or iPad. People understand. But that was always so I've always been a student and I've always been a teacher. And I came up in a really interesting family environment. And family for so many women is our first model of money. So that's often why I talk about it. And right now, people can tune in. Most women will either replicate or rebel against their family money models. So if you were in a family where there was a lot of chaos and big spender, maybe you're very, very careful and a little bit of a hoarder, maybe, and then maybe if the other, money was always tight, you're more profligate and more generous, but that's almost always what's going on. And my family background, my dad is a first generation Italian American, and he was the first in his family to go to any kind of education. And he got a job, but then started buying individual stocks by going to the library and researching. Like there were big books, like what are the PE ratios? And he was millionaire next door. He built back then we called it a middle class income, for my family. My mom is the daughter of a Jewish school teacher and an Irish nurse. So she became a teacher and her sister is a nurse, and between the two of them, it was a functional relationship about money. And I saw that modeled, and I have that as my core. I have a safety feeling about money, that if I work, I will earn money and I will be okay. Now, your community wants something more transformative than that, but it's not bad to have a foundation. So I took that, and then in my life, I had tremendous challenges. So in my teens and early 20s, I was struggling with my own alcohol addiction, and that brought me to a power greater than myself. And so I'm catching up to today here. So that began a 30-year journey of, I worked for a commercial bank, I have an MBA, I'm working in corporations, plus I'm surrendering to a higher power, learning about spiritual principles. And after, a while of doing that, I became an ordained interfaith minister. I studied with Dr. Michael at the Agape Center. And about 15 years ago, I'm going to bring my own work into the world. What should it be? And it just became clear. I love God. I love how money works. How do they go together? And that's what brought me to the Money Keys and to your podcast this moment.
Yeah, so amazing. And it's interesting how much both of those words, God and money, can be really taboo for us to talk about, right? So
Yeah.
combining those two, and then also how much religion can have conflict or influence on money. So maybe we're talking about God in the sense of spirituality, not
Yeah.
specifically in a religious context in this way. And I love that you're intersecting these two areas of your life that light you up, that feel, you're passionate about, and bringing them together. So you've been teaching this work for how many years at this point?
So about almost 15 years. So
Okay.
The Money Keys came out, I think, 2007. So it's been almost 15 years of this material. And, for many that are in your community, I know you all have seen where in the spiritual, holistic, healing goddess world, there can be a lot about abundance consciousness and affirmations, but not a lot of practical.
Mhm.
And then if you go to those wealth building workshops, you're like, breaking a board and you've got a millionaire mind. And it's a lot about tactics and mindset, but not a lot of consciousness. So my work is holistic, spirituality, and not religious, but spirituality, beliefs, and habits,
Mhm.
because we need all three. So if you think about, when you coach women, it has to be a holistic approach. Like if they're setting boundaries, but they don't have any follow through, it can't work. Like you just have to have an approach that works on all levels.
Yeah, I love this holistic approach. And my money mentor is one of the very few that I've seen out there as well who does she calls it the practical and the magical, right? And I think that both together are so important.
Yes.
And building your money team of the types of people that support you, you might need a little bit of like the more strategic piece and then more of the spiritual mindset piece. So I love that approach. And we were going to talk today about the flow of money
Mm,
and really about the rhythm of money and having like the masculine and feminine energies with
yeah.
money. So I'd love for you to speak into why it's important to have both and what does
Oh,
that mean within the context of money, the masculine and the feminine energies.
yeah. So all people, all beings have access to, inclusive of gender expression and orientation, we all have access to masculine and feminine energies of creation. And there are some stereotypes about money that don't serve many women. So, for example, that money is just about hard work and moving fast, and you got to be savvy and strong and look out for number one, and kind of a archetypal stereotype of masculine approach, macho man approach with money, and that doesn't really work. And nor does a too surrendered, maybe out of touch, detached type of stereotypical, sort of feminine approach. So both can be positive and both are important. So I really want people to hear when I say masculine and feminine, I mean the positive aspects of both. Because with money, masculine energy is single focus. It's the capacity to say no or yes. It's decision, it's action, it's clarity, it's intelligence, it's wisdom. Without it, most women will feel, if they don't have a strong masculine with money, they'll feel sort of overwhelmed and frantic. But if they do have it, they're clear, they're decisive, they don't doubt themselves. And then the feminine with money, the positive is the multi awareness. So if there's masculine single focus, the feminine is more multi awareness. It's a broader inclusiveness. The feminine with money is receptive, grateful, grace filled, inclusive. It's the capacity to have. Women who have the capacity to have can be satisfied in this moment. And you know this, Amy. If one cannot be satisfied with what she has now, it's really hard to think that more is going to create satisfaction. That feminine capacity to have, to receive is so powerful. Without it, a woman will feel empty, but with it, she can be satisfied. And so ultimately, we build our wealth or our business or our money through action, and we experience our wealth or money or business success with awareness, and both together really powerful.
Mm, yeah, I think that's so important. And I love this understanding of the receptivity of the gratitude, because like you said, if someone is stuck in looking at their budget or looking at the numbers and all they see is like, I don't have enough or I constantly fall short, then that's going to lead to frustration around money. It's going to lead to constriction around money. And if we combine that with the gratitude for what you have and taking the action to create more, I love that approach, because if we just feel bad around money all the time and afraid of money all the time, then why are you going to want to keep going to look at your budget or your bank account? Like most people, in my case, until I started doing work around money, I just avoided my bank
Yeah.
account because I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't trust myself with math. I didn't trust myself to understand numbers. It felt like a very thing that like men know how to do this and men are taught how to do this, but women aren't. And I think the truth is that most people aren't taught about money. I don't think it's a male female thing. But what I'm hearing also is like integrating and inviting in more of the masculine area of money for women is very empowering to know
Yes.
where your money is, to know how much money you have, to understand your numbers versus feeling overwhelmed and maybe ignorant around what's happening in your finances.
Yes. One thing that's very helpful for women to do is look at your life in an area where you've had growth and success. So, for example, if maybe you've struggled with food, but then you've come to have a sense of peace and you can make choices and all that, if you can do it with food, you can do it with your money. Maybe you're someone who has relationships with your animal companions, and no matter how bad your human day is, you always feel love and empowerment and a sense of the divine when you look into your animal companion's eyes. If you can have that love there, you can do it with your money. Like anywhere that you've had progress. So that's mostly what people like, how when you do these podcasts, what people are really, they're tuning into you're bringing a vibration, right? And the vibration I have is that money's good. You can do it. I can do it. We can all do it. Like, I know you have a lot of, I was laughing because you have a lot of episodes that are about sex topics. Don't have me do the sex topics. Okay. Like I would be like, kind of like, oh, I'm a little nervous. Am I going to insult you? Like I wouldn't be the person. But that's partly what people are just tuning in. It's like, oh, this lady about money, she's confident, she's calm. You could tell me anything: bankruptcy, divorce, credit card, short sale, job loss. So it like nothing will faze me because I believe in your prosperity and I believe in your empowerment with money. So that like the vibration, it does matter. And having the masculine and feminine and knowing where you're already strong in your life, that can be really helpful.
I love that. And what you're sharing here is that we all have a relationship with money and that it can be improved, and that it can be worked on.
Yes. And I really admire what you said about your own, like moving from avoiding to getting some help and support, being a student, learning, having some modeling, and then having a value for what you want to learn, holistic approach. So you chose a mentor who's got the magic and the practical. Like just you can do this is I want people to come away definitely feeling like you can do this. Money is an energy and it's essentially neutral. And just like you said, when you look at an account, we're the ones who say that many digits is big. This one is little. This is good. This is bad. This is enough. It's likely, I'm going to be a little tough here. It's likely that the people who are connecting with this podcast are have freedoms, have the internet, have a safe place to sleep, clean water to drink. And not that we should feel guilty, but it's just, we're doing good. We can do better and give more. And we're the ones who decide that.
Yeah, putting a label or attaching an emotion to the number itself.
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you think that why do you think that most women struggle with money? Why do you think that this is something that is so prevalent?
You know, it's interesting because I used to answer this a little differently a few years ago, but I'm going to start with, it hasn't been that long in Western culture that women literally had access to money and tools. So I just turned 60. My mother in 1970s, she's still alive. She's in her 80s. In the 1974 or something, a woman could not get a credit card unless her husband or her father signed the thing. Like, I think there's going to be people that are like, can't believe that, but that's true in America. In many countries in the West, it's like women didn't have access to capital, to the tools of money until relatively fairly recently. So I don't want to blame but I want to just set a little context. We're doing great in terms of our generational empowerment, but that legacy is there. So just know that, be aware of that. The other reason I think that women sometimes suffer with money is we mistakenly tie our net worth to our self-worth. Too much of that, like I am a good girl, a bad girl. I am worthy, not worthy, depending on what my financial results are. And again, simply not accurate. So I think those are two of the factors. And then I would say over and like not being as developed in the strong masculine, strong feminine. It's like people just need to develop more. And when they do, they can have a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. I agree with all of those. And I love that you started with the context of the history of women and money, because even if we're looking at the energetics of money, not even just the practical side, like if we think about like our parents and grandparents, and when I look at the lineage of the women in my family, like it's actually ancestral. There's scientific evidence that like our ancestral patterns and roots are actually in our DNA. We actually carry that. And so we are creating a really big paradigm shift in specifically the relationship with women and money, and starting to create a new storyline for not only ourselves, but future generations. And I remember specifically my grandmother said, she always used to say, she said, you should always have like your own money set aside just in case. Like she was very clear that like without her own money set aside, she didn't have freedom, that women don't have freedom with that. And that stuck with me around, like having your own money to your own name, which she didn't have access to, I think, until probably, her parents passed or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting how we carry these stories from our lineage as well.
Yes. So I was single up until I was 40, and then late in life met the big fella, and that's a whole other podcast.
Yes, it is.
Oh, of course we want to go. But just one of the things I want to also empower is for single women, just being a person who can figure out working, caring for yourself. Maybe you're blessed with some family support. Maybe you have loans that got you through school, whatever. It's like, there's something really beautiful about being a single woman and having a financial stewardship and structure in your life. Do not discount that. And for women who might be in a family situation where maybe you have a partner or a spouse who's ostensibly like the breadwinner, terrible word, that I won't ever use that again. But maybe you have a spouse who's more of like a outside income generator, is that the other person is still a contributor. And I always believe, I think your grandmother was right. It's like you want to have everybody in a partnership has some aspect access to their own money.
Yeah, it's interesting how that changes even now with even if both people are earning, like who's managing the money, who's looking at the money, are both people looking at the money, or do you just leave it for one person to make decisions? And I think just even having awareness around what's going on with your finances if you are in a marriage or in a partnership, because it can be used for control. I've heard a lot of stories around relationships, and money can be a big tension point in relationships as well. So that's a whole another conversation too.
Yeah. Well, we should share the weekly practical Money Monday, Faithful Friday tips. So how would you get started with these ideas?
Amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
So I took this idea about masculine money focus and feminine spiritual faith, and I said, how do we put it into action? And so I wrote a little mini book called Grow Yourself, Grow Your Wealth that describes this next piece in detail. I wanted to create what are called weekly money rituals. And this is no matter what your situation is financially, you can engage in Money Monday, which is masculine money focus. So Money Monday is your time to activate giving, action, clarity. So every Monday, give yourself 10 to 20 minutes where you give attention to your money. And the first thing you do is you give thanks for what you do have. If you are a person who does what's called spiritual giving or tithing, you can do that on Monday. Or if you did it over the weekend at a religious or a faith place, you can bless it on Monday. But you give financially, which means you give thanks for the 100% comes to you. If you give 10%, that's called a tithe, T-I-T-H-E. But you could give 1/10 of 1%. But I recommend you're a weekly giver, consistent giver. Even if you're giving a modest percentage, you train that you're a giver. And then you give attention to your money. So you go into your accounts. If you own a business, maybe you look at sales reports. You look at your expenses that are coming up for the week. If you run a family, maybe you look at some of your accounts and you look at your family spending plan. If you're using an app, you make sure you're up to date with your Mint, your Clarity, or whatever you're using. But you give attention to the actual money, and then you give attention to your goals and you choose actions for the week. So Amy, imagine you did that 10 to 20 minutes on Mondays. What would that do for you?
Bring a lot more awareness to where your money's at. Yeah.
Yeah. You just kind of feel like I would be so clear. And and I'd be aware. I'd know.
Yeah, being more present with money is what comes up, instead of it being only at the end of the month or when you have a bill or something that you need to deal with. And it sounds also being more proactive versus
Exactly.
the reactivity of like, oh, I have to pay this bill, or oh, I have to, pay this card, and really being in touch with your money on a weekly basis. That's when we're talking about relationship building with money, or shifting your relationship with money. Like, you're spending time with money is what you're doing here.
You are, and it's your fresh time. It's your empowered time. And, if folks are coaches, healers, experts, and you set your own rates, I guarantee you, if you get engaged with Money Monday, you will want to raise your rates by at least 10, 15, 20%. Because what just happens is you're like, I'm working so hard. I start to see where all this money's going. And, maybe my rate has been kind of in the middle of the range of what a energy healer does. It's like, you're going to be like, I give tremendous value. So don't despair if you give yourself a raise. It's a good thing. And then on Friday, and don't skimp on Faithful Friday, because this is the receiving practice. On Fridays, you allow yourself, and this can be short, 5 to 10 minutes, where you pause, you stop, and you look back over your week and you see, how was I supported by the divine, by spirit, by the universe? How have I been supported around my money and work and wealth and productivity? And then what results can I celebrate? What am I grateful for? What can I be receptive to? How can I activate that sense of gratitude and appreciation? And you let yourself rest with that and become still. Action on Monday, stillness on Friday. That rhythm creates a sense of vitality that you can sustain week after week. So often people do Faithful Friday, and then they'll start to close out their week, and they're able to pause and stop and take a break. So what would you imagine Faithful Friday would do for you, Amy?
Yeah, I think it brings so much gratitude, and just allowing to really, what you were talking about before, is taking that time to appreciate what you have and to be in the positive energy, the good energy around money, and doing that on a weekly basis would be really expansive, I think, for a lot of people.
Yes.
Mhm.
We think sometimes that we grow just by speed, but we don't. We need rhythm. Money loves rhythm. We need that, like, act, rest, think, empty. We need rhythm in everything. Anything that has health and vitality has a natural rhythm to it.
Yeah, amazing. I know if we were in action all of the time, that would be exhausting. And if we were resting all the time, then you wouldn't get much done. So
Exactly.
definitely love both of these. Yeah. So you have a book that you obviously shared about earlier, The Money Keys. So I'd
Yes.
like to invite our listeners to check out the Money Keys, can they find that on Amazon, or where can they
Yes.
find that?
So the best place to be in touch with me is themoneykeys.com, or you can get the Money Keys or the little mini book, Grow Yourself, Grow Your Wealth, on Amazon. It's a great place to go.
Amazing. So we'll link all of that in the show notes. And I want to say thank you so much again, Karen, for joining us here. And I look forward to continue learning with you and checking out your book as well.
Thank you, Amy.